Imagine that the history we repeat to ourselves is not a beginning, but a recovery. Imagine that the first villages, the first harvests, the first temples, the first symbols pressed into clay, were not humanity waking up for the first time, but humanity trying to remember how to stand after something enormous had knocked it down. We are taught to see the past as a straight road, a clean ascent from stone tools to cities, from scattered camps to kings, from myth to science, from ignorance to modern light. But what if that line is only the most recent thread pulled from a much older fabric? What if civilization did not rise once? What if it rose, burned, drowned, froze, shattered, and returned again? What if we are not the first great age of human beings, but the seventh attempt? The idea sounds impossible until you begin looking at the places where the official story grows thin. It begins in the earth, in the stone, in the drowned edges of continents, in myths that refuse to die, and in monuments that appear too complete, too precise, too confident for the cultures that are supposed to have built them from nothing. It begins with the feeling that something is missing from the timeline. Not a small correction. Not a misplaced date. Something vast. Something hidden by erosion, water, silence, and perhaps by fear. The first clue is not a legend of a golden age. It is not a secret tablet or a whispered temple tradition. It is the sudden appearance of complexity. Across the ancient world, monuments rise as if they have entered history already mature. Stonework appears without a long, visible childhood. Calendars emerge that seem to understand cycles of the sky with unnerving care. Sacred sites align to solstices, equinoxes, stars, and horizons as if the people who placed them had not merely watched the heavens for a few generations, but had inherited the results of watching for ages. We are told this is the genius of early civilization, and perhaps in part it is. Ancient people were not simple. They were observant, patient, mathematical, and deeply intelligent. But even granting them all the respect they deserve, the question remains. Why do some of the oldest surviving works look like culminations rather than experiments? Why do the earliest layers of certain sites appear more exact than the later repairs? Why does the first stone sometimes seem wiser than the hands that came after it? Step too close to the edge of accepted history and the floor begins to shift. In the mountains, stones weighing more than modern machinery would comfortably handle are cut and joined with eerie precision. In dry deserts, alignments stretch across landscapes that were once green and living. Beneath the ocean, divers find terraces, walls, roads, and platforms where no city is supposed to be. Under layers of sediment, objects are reported that should not belong to any human age we recognize. One by one, each anomaly can be explained away. Together, they begin to form a different question. What survived the last forgetting? Before going deeper, it is important to walk carefully. Not every mystery is proof. Not every strange stone is artificial. Not every object found in an old layer belongs to that layer. Nature can carve surprising shapes, and people can make mistakes, exaggerate claims, or fabricate stories. But the point is not to believe every anomaly. The point is to notice the pattern of discomfort around them. Some questions are not dangerous because they are false. They are dangerous because if even a fraction of them are true, the timeline bends. Every field of knowledge begins with things that do not fit. Most are eventually absorbed. A mistake is corrected, a layer is redated, a context is clarified, and the story becomes stronger. But some anomalies do not vanish so easily. They remain like stones under the skin of history. Too small to overthrow everything at once, too persistent to ignore forever. These are the fragments that create the unease, shaped objects said to have emerged from coal, tools reportedly sealed in ancient stone, metallic pieces whose form seems wrong for the age assigned to them, underwater walls at depths that suggest older shorelines, and megalithic foundations beneath later cultures. The mainstream answer is usually contamination, misinterpretation, or fraud. Often that may be right. Yet the deeper unease comes from repetition. The same kind of contradiction returns in different lands, under different names, across different centuries of discovery. A single misplaced object is a curiosity. A recurring class of misplaced objects becomes a wound. That wound opens further beneath the oceans. During the last ice age, the map of the world was not the map we know. Sea levels were far lower. Vast continental shelves lay exposed. Lands that are now seabed were once coastal plains, river valleys, and habitable corridors. If early complex cultures existed before the seas rose, many of their most important settlements would not be buried under soil. They would be underwater. And that is where the old stories point. Almost every ancient culture remembers water. Not ordinary rain, not seasonal flooding, but the overwhelming arrival of the sea. The world drowned. The sky opened. The oceans rose. The old lands disappeared. Survivors climbed mountains, built boats, followed teachers, carried seeds, rescued animals, preserved laws, or emerged from caves after the waters fell. The details differ, but the structure is too familiar to ignore. A world before. A flood. A remnant. A new beginning. For a long time, these stories were treated as moral myths. But myth does not always mean falsehood. Myth can be a memory with its face changed by time. It can be trauma translated into symbols because ordinary language fails. When a catastrophe is too large for a people to measure, they pass it on through gods, monsters, sacred warnings, and songs. Later generations may forget the event, but the shape remains. What if the flood stories are not primitive explanations of local rivers, but broken memories of global shoreline loss? What if some of them point back to the end of the Ice Age, when meltwater pulses raised seas and swallowed ancient coasts? What if, hidden beneath those waters, are the remains of cultures older than the story we tell? The Earth has not been still. It moves in cycles: ice and thaw, drought and flood, eruption and ash, impact and winter, magnetic shift and solar storm. We live on a planet that breathes over spans longer than memory. Civilizations rise in windows of stability, and when the window closes, even brilliance may not be enough. A city can plan for war. It can plan for drought. It can plan for bad harvests. But what can it do when coastlines vanish, skies darken, crops fail, diseases spread, trade routes collapse, and the survivors scatter before they can write the ending? A civilization is not erased only when its buildings fall. It is erased when continuity breaks. When teachers die before teaching. When archives burn or drown. When specialists become refugees. When language fragments. When the grandchildren of engineers inherit only stories about stone giants and sky fire. Within a few generations, knowledge can become ritual. Within a few more, ritual becomes myth. And after enough time, myth becomes something scholars dismiss because it no longer looks like evidence. This is how a world disappears without leaving an empty grave. It becomes the foundation under the next world. If earlier civilizations rose before ours, their remains would not necessarily resemble modern ruins. They might be scattered beyond recognition. A harbor beneath the sea. A foundation under a later temple. A star map preserved in priestly tradition. A stone cutting method imitated without full comprehension. A flood memory turned into sacred warning. A genetic trace carried by descendants who survived the collapse without knowing what they carried. The possibility becomes more unsettling when we look at the rhythm of rebuilding. After periods of upheaval, human societies sometimes appear to regain complexity with surprising speed. Agriculture spreads. Settlements stabilize. Monuments rise. Calendars emerge. Myths speak of teachers arriving from elsewhere, bringing laws, measurements, writing, medicine, agriculture, or astronomical knowledge. The official answer is cultural innovation. And again, yes, human beings innovate. But another possibility remains: some cultures may have inherited fragments from survivors of an older collapse. A remnant of a previous age would not need to arrive in flying machines or descend from the stars. They would only need to remember something others had forgotten. In a shattered world, a person who knows how to plant, measure, predict the seasons, treat wounds, fire clay, map the sky, or shape stone could become a god in memory. The divine teacher may have been no more than a survivor with a library inside his mind. This makes the old myths feel different. The gods who teach humanity do not have to be supernatural. They may be memory wearing a mask. The flood hero preserving animals may be a story about biodiversity after catastrophe. The sacred mountain refuge may be the high ground where a culture survived rising seas. The long winter may be volcanic ash or impact dust. The fire from the sky may not be metaphor. It may be a memory of an atmosphere burning. The deeper the myths go, the more they seem to describe not fantasy, but aftermath. Stories from across the world speak of a time when the sun dimmed, when the sky changed color, when ash covered the earth, when cold lasted too long, when seas rose violently, when cities vanished overnight, and when only a chosen remnant lived to rebuild. These accounts come from peoples separated by distance and language. Their details have been reshaped by belief, but the emotional core remains remarkably similar: something ended before us. Geology does not reject this completely. It tells us of abrupt climate transitions, volcanic winters, sea level surges, glacial collapses, and sudden environmental pressure. Ice cores preserve ash layers and chemical signals of atmospheric disturbance. Ocean sediments record changes in current, temperature, and life. Ancient shorelines show where the sea once was and where it later climbed. The Earth itself keeps the memory of disruption. The question is whether human civilization was already present for some of those disruptions in forms more complex than the accepted timeline allows. If the answer is yes, then most of the evidence may be exactly where we do not look often enough: beneath the water. The continental shelves are among the great hidden archives of humanity. During lower sea levels, they were not empty margins. They were prime land, flat, fertile, coastal, river-fed, rich in food, easy for travel and exchange. If human groups became complex earlier than we think, many would have gathered there. Then the seas rose. Not all at once everywhere, but enough to erase entire worlds slowly in some places and violently in others. A settlement does not need to be smashed by a wave to disappear from history. It only needs to be drowned, abandoned, covered in silt, and forgotten by descendants who moved inland under pressure. Thousands of years later, a sonar line passes over it and someone says, "Natural formation." This is why underwater anomalies are so important. Off-island coasts, near old shelves, in places where myth and geology overlap, shapes appear that look planned. Terraces, blocks, alignments, submerged roads, harbor-like arrangements. Some may be natural. Some may be misread. But some may be the edges of the old map breaking through the new one. There is a powerful discomfort in the idea that the sea is not only a wilderness, but a museum. A museum without labels. A museum whose galleries are dark, pressured, and guarded by distance. The same discomfort surrounds certain megalithic sites. The official histories often describe them as achievements of the cultures that occupied them last, but traditions sometimes say otherwise. Later peoples claim they inherited the stones. They say the foundations were already there. They say giants built them, or gods, or ancestors from before the flood. We smile at the language and miss the possibility that inheritance is the key. At some sites, the oldest blocks are the largest. The later additions are smaller or less precise. The foundation seems to belong to a deeper layer of skill. This is not always true, but where it occurs it raises the same strange possibility: knowledge declining, not progressing. A culture may have occupied, repaired, reused, and mythologized structures it did not originate. This does not diminish later builders. It makes them more human. Imagine discovering the ruins of a world your ancestors barely survived. You would build beside them. You would worship there. You would imitate their lines. You would tell your children the old ones made them. In time, the distinction between builder, survivor, and inheritor would blur. Perhaps that is what we are seeing. The monuments become memory devices after the memory itself fails. Consider the great stone complexes aligned to the heavens. To align a structure precisely to a solstice requires observation. To encode longer cycles requires longer observation. To understand precession or subtle astronomical movement requires patience across generations. If early cultures developed these systems from scratch, they were capable of astonishing continuity. But if they inherited part of this knowledge, the puzzle changes. The monuments may be less like first discoveries and more like attempts to preserve older calendars whose original meaning was fading. A broken civilization might preserve sky knowledge because the sky was the warning system. If disaster came from climate cycles, cosmic impacts, solar storms, or seasonal disruptions, then watching the heavens was not religion in the modern sense. It was survival. Later generations might remember only the ceremony, not the reason. A temple aligned to a star may have begun as an alarm. The old world may have watched the sky because it feared the return of something. This would explain why many ancient traditions connect celestial events with destruction: wandering stars, dark suns, red skies, comets, serpents in heaven, dragons of fire, gods hurling stones, and ages ending when the sky changes. These are not scientific descriptions, but they may be observational memories transformed by time. A comet fragment becomes a serpent. Atmospheric dust becomes a wounded sun. Meteor showers become arrows of gods. The language changes. The fear remains. The same may be true of long winter myths. Around the world, stories describe years without proper warmth, skies dimmed, crops failing, people hiding, animals dying, and survivors waiting for the sun to return. We know volcanic eruptions can produce such effects. We know impacts can inject dust into the atmosphere. We know abrupt cooling events have occurred. Why assume every old memory of darkness is symbolic? Sometimes the ancients may have meant exactly what they said. The sun disappeared. The crops failed. The world nearly ended. If a highly organized society existed before such an event, it could lose everything in one generation. Cities depend on surplus. Surplus depends on predictable seasons. Predictable seasons depend on climate stability. Remove stability, and the entire chain shakes. If the sky darkens long enough, fields fail. If fields fail, storage becomes war. If storage fails, cities empty. If cities empty, specialists scatter. If specialists scatter, knowledge fragments. If knowledge fragments, civilization becomes legend. And when the sky clears centuries later, the descendants rebuild from ruins they no longer understand. This cycle may have repeated more than once. The idea of 6 earlier civilizations is not meant to place neat borders where none exist, but to suggest a rhythm, several windows of complexity, several collapses, several partial recoveries. Each world may have been different. One coastal and maritime. One desert green and river fed. One glacial edge and migratory. One forest engineering and ecological. One megalithic and astronomical. One urban and technologically mature in ways we can barely reconstruct. Their names are gone. Their languages are gone. Their maps are gone. But their echoes may remain. One possible world may have existed on the drowned Sunda Shelf, where Southeast Asia was once joined into a vast lowland. Today much of it is under shallow seas, but during lower sea levels it could have supported large populations, river networks, and early maritime cultures. If cities or ceremonial centers existed there before the waters rose, they would now be hidden beneath silt and sea. Flood traditions across the surrounding islands may be cultural shadows of that drowning. Another may have flourished in the Green Sahara, when the desert was not desert but savanna, lake, river, and migration corridor. Rock art shows a vanished world of animals, boats, cattle, and human activity. Beneath the sands, ancient river systems and buried shapes hint at landscapes more complex than the empty desert we imagine. When the climate shifted, the green world died. People moved toward the Nile, the Mediterranean, and sub-Saharan regions. Could fragments of Saharan memory have helped seed later civilizations? The possibility is not absurd. A third may have lived across Beringia, the lost land between Siberia and Alaska. Today it is largely underwater, but during the Ice Age it was a vast grassland. We often call it a bridge, but perhaps it was more than a bridge. It may have been a homeland, a place where people adapted to cold, long-distance movement, and megafauna ecosystems. When seas rose, that homeland vanished. Its survivors carried memories and genetic traces into the Americas and Asia. A fourth may have preceded the visible Indus Valley civilization, whose urban planning appears so mature that it feels like a civilization already deep in its own tradition. Standardized weights, drainage, grid planning, and water management suggest long experience. Beneath the known ruins may be older layers of development, older experiments, older inherited knowledge now hidden by time, river movement, and incomplete excavation. A fifth may be connected to the Mediterranean islands, where megalithic structures, sea routes, and old harbor traditions suggest networks older than the written empires that later dominated the region. Malta, Crete, Sardinia, Cyprus, and surrounding coasts preserve fragments of a maritime world where navigation, stonework, and ceremonial architecture may have deeper roots than acknowledged. A sixth may lie beneath the forests of the Amazon, where Ladar has revealed roads, earthworks, mounds, canals, and large-scale landscape modification. For centuries, outsiders imagined the rainforest as too hostile for complex civilization, but the forest itself was shaped by human hands. If ecological engineering, not stone monumentality, was the primary technology of some earlier cultures, then their ruins would not look like pyramids. They would look like altered soil, planned forest, waterworks, and patterns only visible from above. These six are not certain kingdoms with neat borders. They are possible windows into the deeper pattern, civilizations shaped by their environments, rising during stable periods, falling when the systems that supported them changed too quickly. The most unsettling part is not that they may have fallen. It is that they may have fallen for reasons that sound familiar. Climate disruption, sea level rise, volcanic darkness, impact shock, resource strain, social fragmentation, conflict over survival, loss of trust, failure to preserve knowledge, failure to listen to warnings. Our modern world is larger, louder, and more technologically advanced than any known past society. But it is also deeply fragile in ways we do not like to admit. We depend on electricity, satellites, global shipping, digital memory, mineral supply chains, climate stability, complex agriculture, and institutions that require trust to function. We believe our knowledge is safe because it is everywhere. But much of it lives in forms that cannot survive prolonged collapse. Data without power is silence. Cloud memory without servers is vapor. A device without a grid is a stone with a dark screen. If our civilization fell, what would remain after 10,000 years? Plastic fragments, concrete ruins, corroded metal, strange isotopes, myths of towers, lights, flying machines, thinking boxes, and voices carried through the air. A future culture might find a buried circuit and call it ceremonial. It might find skyscraper foundations and say they were natural or symbolic. It might dismiss stories of global networks as myth because no wires remain intact. We would become exactly what we are now searching for: an impossible age. This mirror is the true power of the seventh civilization idea. It does not only point backward. It points forward. It asks what we are doing that earlier worlds may also have done. It asks whether collapse begins with disaster or with denial. It asks whether the greatest danger is not the flood or fire itself, but the belief that our world is too advanced to vanish. The earlier civilizations, if they existed, may have ignored their warnings. Perhaps they saw the seas rise and argued about measurement. Perhaps they watched the sky dim and called it temporary. Perhaps their leaders hid the danger to prevent panic. Perhaps their scholars dismissed old prophecies because they were wrapped in myth. Perhaps their engineers trusted systems built for a calmer world. Perhaps their people waited too long. Perhaps that is always how the cycle turns. Not with ignorance, but with confidence. The evidence, or the possibility of evidence, keeps returning to the same instruction: look deeper. Beneath water. Beneath sand. Beneath the first layer of monuments. Beneath myth. Beneath the arrogance of linear progress. Beneath our own fear of being ordinary in the long age of the earth. If we are the seventh civilization, then the six before us are not merely lost. They are teachers. Their ruins, if we can find them, are not trophies. They are warnings. Their myths are not bedtime stories. They are emergency signals blurred by time. Their monuments are not only sacred architecture. They are markers, calendars, memory engines, perhaps attempts to speak across collapse. The question is whether we are willing to listen before we become the next message. Because the cycle, if real, does not care whether we believe in it. The sea will rise whether we debate it. The sky will change whether we name it. Systems will fail whether or not our models are elegant. The Earth does not ask permission to enter a new phase. Civilization survives such phases only if they understand what is happening early enough and preserve what matters deeply enough. This may be the choice before us. To remain the seventh civilization that repeats the pattern. Or to become the first civilization that breaks it. Breaking it would not mean stopping every disaster. No civilization can command the planet completely. It would mean building memory that survives shocks. It would mean preserving knowledge in durable forms. It would mean mapping vulnerable coastlines and old ruins with honesty. It would mean taking myth seriously without surrendering reason. It would mean studying anomalies without fear. It would mean designing systems that can fail gracefully instead of collapsing all at once. It would mean humility. The humility to admit that we may not be the first. The humility to accept that history may be older, stranger, and more broken than our textbooks suggest. The humility to prepare not because doom is certain, but because forgetting is possible. If we succeed, the eighth civilization may inherit more than myths. It may inherit maps, warnings, archives, tools, seed banks, star knowledge, medical knowledge, engineering knowledge, and an honest account of who we were. It may know that it is not beginning from nothing. It may understand the cycle before the cycle takes it by surprise. If we fail, we will become a layer. A rumor in the ground. A story about a people who lit the night, spoke through invisible webs, crossed the sky in metal birds, built towers of glass, and vanished when the world changed. Future scholars may argue over us. Some will say we were impossible. Some will say the ruins are natural. Some will say the myths are symbolic. Some will say no civilization that advanced could have disappeared so completely. And somewhere, beneath their feet or under their seas, a fragment of our world will wait for someone brave enough to ask the forbidden question. What if they were not the first? So as the night settles and the old stories return to silence, remember this: history may not be a line behind us. It may be a depth beneath us. The world we know may be built on older worlds, and the future may depend on whether we learn from their disappearance before our own age becomes another mystery. The cycle may be warning us. And the past may be trying, still, to speak. There is another layer to the mystery, and it begins with how quickly certainty arrives whenever the past becomes uncomfortable. An unusual stone formation appears beneath the sea, and before the divers have finished mapping it, a label is already waiting. Natural. A metal fragment is found in a context that raises questions, and before the questions mature, the explanation is already prepared. Intrusion. A myth matches a coastline that vanished thousands of years ago, and the connection is treated as poetry, never memory. Again and again, the response comes faster than the investigation. That speed matters. Because science, at its best, is slow where evidence is strange. It tests, doubts, compares, revises, and returns. But institutional history often behaves differently. It defends continuity. It protects the structure of what is already accepted. This does not require a grand conspiracy in every case. It only requires habit. Careers, museums, university departments, funding streams, textbooks, documentaries, and national identities are all built around a timeline. If the timeline shifts slightly, no great panic follows. If it collapses, everything has to be rewritten. And so the strange things are often kept apart. A submerged site in one country. A flood memory in another. A megalithic foundation somewhere else. A genetic bottleneck. A vanished coastline. A myth of sky fire. A stone too large for its supposed builders. A calendar too exact for its alleged age. Each is explained separately. Never let them gather in the same room. But if they are allowed to gather, the shape becomes harder to dismiss. They begin to resemble a crime scene after the storm has passed. The body is gone, the house is flooded, the witnesses are dead, and yet the marks remain on the walls. The old world, if it existed, did not leave us a confession. It left debris. The most overlooked debris may be the behavior of later civilizations themselves. When the known ancient cultures built monuments, they often did so in places that already mattered. A sacred hill. A strange mound. A weathered platform. A cave aligned to the sky. A stone foundation older than local memory. Again and again, sacred geography seems to precede the culture that later explains it. The builders arrive into a landscape already charged with meaning. They do not begin with blank ground. They inherit places. This is how memory survives after language fails. A place remains sacred long after the reason is forgotten. The people no longer know why the hill matters, only that it does. They build there. They bury there. They watch the sun there. They tell stories there. The original function vanishes, but the magnetism remains. Some ancient sites may be exactly this, not original creations, but memory anchors. A civilization collapses. Its survivors scatter. A few places remain known. Do not forget this hill. Return when the star rises. Build where the old stones lie. After generations, instruction becomes tradition. Tradition becomes religion. Religion becomes architecture. The site survives, but the explanation changes. That may be why so many monuments appear to be both scientific and sacred. Their astronomy is real, but their ritual is also real. Their engineering is practical, but their symbolism is profound. They may have begun as instruments and ended as temples. Or perhaps the distinction is modern. To an earlier world, measuring the heavens, preserving time, and surviving cycles may have been the highest form of sacred work. The deeper we look, the more the old division between technology and religion begins to blur. A calendar can be a machine and a myth at the same time. A pyramid can be a marker, a tomb, a resonator, an observatory, and a national memory compressed into stone. A megalith can be both engineering and prayer. If we insist on one function only, we may misunderstand the ancient mind and the older knowledge it inherited. This is especially true if the earlier civilizations faced recurring disaster. A culture living under the memory of planetary resets would treat time differently. It would not measure the sky for curiosity alone. It would watch for warning. It would encode cycles in stone because paper burns, wood rots, and memory fails. It would align monuments to horizons because the horizon is a clock no empire can confiscate. It would build with stone because stone is one of the few languages catastrophe does not easily erase. What, then, are the great monuments really saying? Perhaps they are not saying, "Look how powerful we were." Perhaps they are saying, "Remember when to look up." This possibility changes the emotional meaning of ancient architecture. It becomes less about pride and more about survival. The builders may have been placing signals into the future. They may have known that language would shift, dynasties would fall, and names would be lost. So they used geometry. They used the sun. They used the stars. They used weight. They used stone. A sentence can be mistranslated. A stone aligned to the solstice continues to speak. But what if even that speech has been misunderstood? What if the alignments are not merely ceremonial but part of a warning system tracking cycles longer than ordinary civilization remembers? Precession, solar behavior, cometary periods, climate rhythms, sea level shifts, magnetic variation. To us these are scientific categories. To them they may have been parts of one great pattern, the turning of ages. The idea of ages appears everywhere. Golden ages. Silver ages. Ages of gods. Ages of heroes. Ages of darkness. Ages destroyed by water or fire. Some traditions describe repeating worlds, each one born, corrupted, destroyed, and replaced. These stories may not preserve exact data, but they preserve structure. They remember that civilization is not guaranteed permanence. They remember that worlds end. Modern people often treat these cycles as spiritual metaphors. But perhaps they are the cultural remains of observational science too old to survive in technical form. A priest reciting an age cycle may be preserving the residue of an astronomical or climatic model. A myth of recurring destruction may be a compressed memory of repeated global stresses. A sacred number may once have been a measurement. If we lose the key, the code becomes poetry. This may be what happened to the old knowledge. It did not disappear entirely. It changed state. Engineering became sacred geometry. Astronomy became astrology. Disaster science became prophecy. Geography became mythic underworlds and lost continents. Survival instructions became ritual purity laws, seasonal festivals, fasting cycles, and taboos. The rational skeleton remained hidden inside symbolic flesh. This would explain why myth can feel irrational and precise at the same time. Its surface changes, but its inner pattern persists. The stories of drowned lands are especially stubborn. They appear in places where geology now confirms that coastlines were lost. Indigenous Australian oral traditions preserve memories of sea level rise across thousands of years. Island peoples tell of submerged lands and vanished shores. South Asian texts speak of cities swallowed by the sea. Mediterranean legends preserve islands, kingdoms, and ports lost to water. In the Americas, stories of floods and survivors appear again and again. We do not need to accept every detail to recognize the recurring human memory of shoreline catastrophe. Water is the great eraser. Fire destroys quickly, but water hides patiently. A burned city may leave ash. A drowned city becomes reef, silt, coral, shadow, and rumor. The sea smooths edges. It scatters small objects. It covers roads with sand. It makes excavation expensive, dangerous, and rare. If a civilization fell to rising seas, its most important remains may now be in the least accessible archive on Earth. This is why the ocean is so central to the theory of earlier civilizations. We have explored only a small fraction of the seafloor in the kind of detail archaeology requires. We know more about certain planetary surfaces than about many drowned coastlines. And yet we speak confidently about what did or did not exist before the seas rose. That confidence may be premature. Imagine a future scholar trying to reconstruct our world after the sea has swallowed New York, Shanghai, Mumbai, Alexandria, London's lowlands, Miami, Jakarta, and countless other coastal cities. If the surviving archives were shattered and power gone, what would remain above water? Inland towns. Fragments. Myths of drowned towers. Stories of coastal kingdoms. Strange objects washed ashore. Would the future timeline place our highest complexity in the wrong places because the best evidence was underwater? This may be exactly what we have done to the past. The old coastlines may hold the missing chapters. And perhaps that is why the silence around them feels so heavy. There are also deserts. The Sahara was not always the Sahara. The Arabian deserts were not always as we see them. Dry basins once held lakes. Fossil riverbeds crossed lands now emptied of water. Human beings followed those rivers. Animals grazed there. Rock art records life where now there is sand. If civilizations rose in those green windows, the desert would be their ocean, an eraser made of dryness, wind, burial, and distance. A buried city under sand can vanish almost as completely as one beneath water. It can remain unknown until radar, lidar, or chance finds its outline. And even then, what is discovered may be interpreted through the lens of what is already expected. If we expect only camps, we call ruins camps. If we expect only simple settlement, we overlook evidence of planning. The past is often limited by the questions we bring to it. The Amazon teaches the same lesson in a different language. For generations, much of the rainforest was assumed to be too wild, too poor, too hostile for large-scale complex societies. Then lidar revealed earthworks, roads, platforms, and planned landscapes hidden beneath the canopy. Suddenly what looked untouched became deeply historical. The forest was not empty. It was, in places, an archive of human design grown over by life. This should make us cautious. If a living forest can hide civilization, how much more can oceans, deserts, ice, and volcanic ash hide? Ice is the most complete silencer of all. Glacier grind, bury, move, and erase. If any complex human activity occurred in lands later covered by ice, the evidence may have been crushed beyond recognition or pushed into deposits no one reads as cultural. The absence of evidence under ice is not surprising. It may simply be the effect of the most brutal archive on Earth. And then there is volcanic ash. A single eruption can bury a world. Pompeii shows us how ash can preserve, but larger eruptions can also obliterate, poison, darken skies, and force migration on a scale beyond ordinary memory. If a civilization depended on agriculture across regions devastated by ashfall or volcanic winter, its social order could collapse even if its buildings remained standing. Empty cities become quarries. Later peoples reuse the stones. Eventually the original culture dissolves into the ground. The Toba eruption, the Younger Dryas climate disruption, meltwater pulses, abrupt cooling events, regional megadroughts, and impact hypotheses all sit around the edges of this mystery. Mainstream science debates mechanisms, dates, and consequences. That debate matters. But the larger point remains, Earth has experienced abrupt and severe changes within the span of human existence. Any model of civilization that assumes a calm planet is incomplete. The seventh civilization idea asks us to consider a longer human vulnerability. Not whether humans existed. Not whether humans were intelligent. But whether intelligence had enough time, enough stability, and enough concentration to build complexity before the last great erasure. If earlier human groups did build, trade, observe, engineer, and organize before the accepted start of civilization, the evidence would be exactly the kind we find difficult, scattered, submerged, buried, mythologized, and often reinterpreted by later cultures. That is the heart of the theory. Not that every mystery proves a lost super-civilization, but that the known record may be the survivor's record, not the full record. Survivor records are always distorted. They preserve what made it through catastrophe, not what existed before it. If a library burns and only one page survives, the page is not the whole book. If coastlines drown and only inland ritual centers remain, those centers are not the whole civilization. If specialists die and only myths remain, myths are not proof of ignorance. They may be the last vessels of knowledge. This also changes how we think about so-called primitive people. Survivors after collapse may look primitive archaeologically while carrying sophisticated memory culturally. A person living in a cave after a global disaster may know stories about cities, machines, calendars, and laws that no longer exist. Their tools may be simple because their world is broken, not because their ancestors knew nothing. This distinction is crucial. Simplicity after collapse is not the same as simplicity before development. A future archaeologist finding a post-collapse camp outside the ruins of our world might conclude the people were primitive. But if those people were descendants of engineers, doctors, pilots, and programmers, the conclusion would be wrong. Their material condition would reflect loss, not origin. Maybe some ancient hunter-gatherer groups were like that, not humanity before civilization, but humanity after an earlier civilization. The thought is unsettling because it breaks the pride of modernity. We want the past to be behind us. We want to be the first to see clearly. But what if we are instead surrounded by amnesia? What if our greatest achievement is not invention but rediscovery? What if mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, navigation, and social law have been found, lost, and found again? The myths of cultural bringers then become less strange. Someone after collapse remembers irrigation. Someone remembers seed selection. Someone remembers how to fire clay. Someone remembers how to track Venus, Sirius, Orion, or the solstice. Someone remembers a measurement system. They teach. Their students revere them. Their descendants deify them. Their names distort. Their instructions become sacred law. This may be how fragments of the previous world entered the present one. Not through secret vaults, but through people. Through memory. Through blood. Through ritual. The genetic layer deepens the mystery in a different direction. Human populations carry marks of bottlenecks, migrations, admixture, and adaptation. We know our species passed through severe pressures. We know there were other human forms and deep ancestries. We know that some populations preserve unusual adaptations linked to environment, altitude, immunity, metabolism, or survival. Mainstream genetics explains much of this through known processes. But the symbolic power remains: we are archives of catastrophe. Our bodies remember what our stories forgot. A trait shaped by famine does not announce the famine. It simply persists. A genetic adaptation to altitude does not tell the myth of the mountain refuge. It silently improves survival. A disease resistance marker does not recite the plague that selected it. It remains in the blood after the graveyards vanish. If ancient collapses force small groups into extreme refuges, some of their adaptations may still echo faintly among us. This is not proof of advanced lost technology. But it is proof that human history is deeper, more broken, and more survival-shaped than any simple schoolbook ladder can hold. We are not the children of a calm ascent. We are the children of bottlenecks. Every person alive today descends from those who survived. Not those who were strongest in an abstract sense, not necessarily the most advanced, but those who were in the right places, with the right knowledge, at the right moments, when the world changed. Survival is not always moral. It is often geographical, accidental, brutal, and strange. If earlier civilizations fell, we may carry them not as memories but as absences. The missing branch is in our story. The lost names in our ancestry. The unknown dead who left no nation but made our existence possible. This gives the whole mystery a more somber tone. It is not only about hidden knowledge or suppressed ruins. It is about grief beyond memory. Entire peoples may have existed, loved, built, taught, argued, mapped, and dreamed, only to vanish so completely that we debate whether they were possible at all. That is a lonely kind of death. Perhaps this is why the old flood myths feel mournful even when wrapped in divine language. They are not just stories of punishment. They are stories of near-total loss. The world before is always richer than the world after. The survivors are chosen, but also burdened. They carry the seed of the next age, but they also carry the weight of what cannot be restored. The seventh civilization theory is ultimately about that burden. If 6 worlds came before, then the 7th is not superior by default. It is responsible. Responsible for asking what happened. Responsible for preserving what it knows. Responsible for preparing for cycles it does not control. Responsible for listening to the fragments instead of laughing at them too quickly. The danger is not curiosity. The danger is arrogance disguised as skepticism. True skepticism investigates. It does not dismiss before looking. True science is not frightened by a revised timeline. It is strengthened by better evidence. But institutional certainty can become a cage. It can make honest questions feel like heresy. It can teach researchers to avoid the dangerous edge where discoveries threaten careers. That is why the reaction to anomalies matters as much as the anomalies. If a site is studied and explained naturally after rigorous work, the story grows stronger. But if a site is ignored because its implications are inconvenient, the story grows weaker. If objects are hidden because they attract ridicule, knowledge loses. If underwater ruins are left unexamined because the old timeline has no room for them, we choose comfort over truth. And truth, if buried long enough, returns as myth. This may already be happening. People sense that the official timeline is incomplete. They may not know which claims are reliable. They may be drawn to exaggerations, mistakes, or fantasies because the mainstream story leaves too little space for mystery. When institutions refuse to explore the margins honestly, the margins fill with wild certainty. The cure is not dismissal. It is better investigation. The ancient past deserves both wonder and discipline. We can ask whether drowned cities exist without pretending every rock is a wall. We can explore megalithic inheritance without denying the genius of known ancient builders. We can study myth as possible memory without abandoning critical thought. We can admit that civilization may be older than its surviving record without inventing evidence where none exists. The middle path is the hardest. It is also the most honest. But the story we are rewriting here is not a laboratory report. It is a journey through possibility, told in the language of shadow, memory, and warning. Its purpose is not to close the case. Its purpose is to open the door. Behind that door is the image of humanity as a repeating flame. The first civilization rises in a green world now drowned or buried. It learns the cycles of water and sky, builds near coasts, and disappears beneath the sea. The second rises in a fertile desert, mastering rivers and stars before drought turns its heart to sand. The third thrives on land bridges and cold refuges, adapting to extreme environments before rising water severs its homeland. The fourth inherits river knowledge, builds ordered cities, drains streets, standardizes weights, and then fades under climatic and social pressure. The fifth sails between islands, reading stars and currents, leaving megalithic memory on coasts later broken by eruption and sea. The sixth engineers forests, soils, and landscapes, building with life rather than stone, and is swallowed by jungle, disease, drought, or conquest of memory. Then comes the seventh. Us. We build not with stone alone, but with electricity, code, satellites, glass, steel, and invisible networks of dependence. Our monuments are bright but fragile. Our archives are vast but vulnerable. Our knowledge is everywhere and yet strangely easy to lose. A solar storm, a cyber collapse, a global war, a climate cascade, a supply chain fracture, a pandemic, a magnetic shift, a volcanic winter, a crisis of trust, we have names for the dangers. Naming them does not mean we are ready. Earlier worlds may have named their dangers too. Perhaps they had scholars who warned, priests who calculated, engineers who argued for preparation, leaders who delayed, merchants who denied, citizens who believed the system was too large to fail. Perhaps the final years of every civilization feel normal to those living inside them until the pattern becomes irreversible. This is the warning hidden in the myth of cycles. Collapse is rarely a single door slamming shut. It is many small doors closing while people keep walking down the hall. Then one day, no exit remains. The ancient monuments, if they are warnings, do not scream. They wait. The drowned sites do not explain themselves. They wait. The myths do not prove themselves. They wait. The genes do not speak in language. They wait. The earth does not argue. It records. We are the ones who must learn to read. Perhaps the evidence of earlier worlds has not been erased by enemies. Perhaps it has been erased by the scale of time itself. Oceans erase. Ice erases. Fire erases. Plants erase. Later builders erase by rebuilding. Scholars erase accidentally by forcing old evidence into familiar categories. Governments erase by classifying. Museums erase by forgetting. The result is the same, a past full of absences. But an absence can still have a shape. The shape is visible in the places where history should be smooth and is not. The suddenness of monuments. The maturity of early systems. The global recurrence of catastrophe myths. The drowned coastlines. The deep-time environmental disruptions. The cultural obsession with preserving knowledge after floods. The strange insistence that gods or elders taught humanity what it had forgotten. The sense, everywhere, that before us there was something else. This is not certainty. It is a pattern. And patterns are where every investigation begins. If we follow it, we may discover that the human story is not smaller than we thought, but larger. Not less beautiful, but more tragic. Not less scientific, but more complex. We may discover that civilization is not a crown placed on one age, but a fragile form that emerges whenever memory, climate, cooperation, and time align. We may discover that progress is not a staircase. It is a garden after a fire. It grows from seeds that survived. The final question is what kind of seed we will leave. If our age ends, what will survive us? A warning carved in stone? A library sealed underground? Seed stored in ice? Star maps? Tools? Myths? A message in many languages explaining where we went wrong? Or only fragments so strange that future minds will argue over whether we existed at all? We are the only civilization we know of that can imagine its own disappearance in scientific detail. That should make us wiser. It often only makes us anxious. But anxiety can become preparation if it is given form. The lost worlds, whether literal or symbolic, ask us to prepare memory. They ask us to stop confusing technological height with permanence. They ask us to understand that survival is cultural, biological, geographical, and spiritual all at once. They ask us to honor the past not as a settled museum, but as a field of warnings. And they ask us to look again at the stones, the seas, the stories, and the silences. Because somewhere beneath them may be the answer to the oldest question of all. Have we been here before? And if we have, can we finally choose differently? The night is quiet now. The old civilizations, if they existed, do not speak loudly. They speak in alignments and ash. In drowned roads and broken myths. In the fear of floods and the reverence for stars. In the strange feeling that humanity has lost something it once knew. Listen long enough and the whisper becomes clear. We are not alone in time. We are standing in the ruins of memory. And the next age is already listening for what we will leave behind. There is one more reason the idea refuses to fade. It offers an explanation for the strange loneliness of human memory. We are a species that remembers almost nothing clearly before writing, and writing itself is young compared with the age of human minds. For tens of thousands of years, people watched the sky, buried their dead, crossed rivers, followed animals, built shelters, painted caves, carved symbols, and told stories under stars. We know they lived. We know they observed. We know they passed knowledge from one generation to the next. But almost all of that knowledge is gone. We see only the shadows it left, pigments on stone, tools in earth, bones arranged with care, beads, fire pits, handprints, and the occasional monument that refuses to decay. This loss is so normal to us that we forget how vast it is. If one village loses its songs, a library disappears. If one language dies, a world of classification dies with it. If one coastal people is drowned or displaced, its maps of currents, reefs, fish, weather, and stars may vanish forever. Multiply that loss over millennia, and the official timeline begins to look less like a complete history and more like a torn edge of paper. The missing parts may be larger than the surviving ones. This is why oral tradition matters. Modern culture often treats speech as fragile and writing as permanent, but some oral traditions preserve information across astonishing spans when communities are stable enough to carry them. A story attached to a place can survive long after the place itself changes. A warning about a coastline can last in song. A memory of fire, eruption, or flood can pass through ritual long after names and dates dissolve. Oral memory is not perfect, but neither is written history. Clay breaks. Scrolls burn. Libraries are conquered. Archives rot. Every medium is vulnerable. The question is not which kind of memory is flawless. None is. The question is what fragments survive when the world turns. If earlier civilizations collapsed, their survivors may have relied on oral memory because everything else was gone. They would not preserve engineering manuals word for word. They would preserve the emotional truth: the sea rose, the sky burned, the old cities vanished, the wise ones taught us, the stars warned us, the mountain saved us, the cycle will return. In time, those instructions become mythic. But mythic does not mean meaningless. A myth can be a capsule. It carries what a culture cannot preserve technically. It compresses catastrophe into images that children remember. Flood. Fire. Darkness. Serpent. Arc Mountain. Star. Teacher. Forbidden knowledge. Lost city. These symbols are durable because they are simple, terrifying, and repeatable. They survive precisely because they are not technical. A mathematical model may vanish when the specialists die. A story about the sea swallowing the world can live for 10,000 years. Perhaps the ancients understood this better than we do. Perhaps they knew that the deepest truths had to be carried in forms ordinary people would repeat, not just in forms scholars would guard. If so, the myths may be archives disguised as dreams. There is a quiet tragedy in this. A future age might preserve our climate science not as charts, but as a legend of heat. Our nuclear weapons not as physics, but as a tale of suns made by men. Our satellites as stars that obeyed human voices. Our artificial intelligence as an oracle that spoke from a box of light. Would those stories be false? Not exactly. They would be broken truths, compressed by survival. That may be what we inherited. Broken truths. The story of the seventh civilization is built from those broken truths. It is not a neat academic thesis. It is a pattern of echoes. It asks why humanity seems haunted by lost worlds. Why so many cultures remember a fall. Why stone monuments seem obsessed with the heavens. Why old maps sometimes appear to imply knowledge beyond their supposed age. Why drowned cities occupy the imagination of civilizations on every ocean. Why the oldest sacred sites often feel like repairs to something older than the cultures that named them. And it asks why we react so strongly to the idea. Perhaps because it threatens more than history. It threatens identity. Modern humanity has built its self-image around ascent. We are the ones who finally understand. We are the ones who finally measure the stars correctly. We are the ones who finally build machines, link continents, split atoms, map genomes, and send probes beyond the planets. To imagine earlier ages rising high and falling hard is to imagine ourselves not as a climax, but as a recurrence. That is difficult to accept. But humility may be the price of truth. The seventh civilization idea does not require us to hate the modern world. It requires us to see it in proportion. Our towers are high, but perhaps not the first towers. Our maps are precise, but perhaps not the first maps. Our networks are global, but perhaps not the first networks of exchange. Our confidence is immense, but perhaps confidence itself is part of the pattern. The earlier worlds, if they existed, may have had their own forms of arrogance. A coastal civilization might have believed its seawalls eternal. A desert-green civilization might have believed the rains would always return. A sky-watching civilization might have seen the comet and argued over its meaning until it was too late. A technological civilization might have trusted machines that failed when the energy grid collapsed. A forest civilization might have believed balance with nature made it immune to drought or disease. Every world has its blind spot. Ours may be complexity itself. We assume complexity protects us. But complexity can also hide weakness. A simple village can understand its dependencies. Water, food, fire, shelter, kin. A global civilization depends on things no single person can see: rare earth mining, satellite timing, shipping lanes, semiconductor fabrication, undersea cables, fertilizer inputs, electrical grids, financial trust, software updates, political legitimacy, climate stability. The system is brilliant, but no one fully holds it in the mind. If enough parts fail together, recovery becomes not one problem but thousands. This is how collapse becomes sudden. Not because there were no warnings, but because the warnings belong to different departments. Climate scientists warn one thing. Engineers warn another. Economists warn another. Farmers warn another. Doctors warn another. Historians warn another. Each warning is treated separately, like each anomaly in the ancient record. But collapse is often the moment when separate warnings merge. That may have happened before. Perhaps each lost civilization saw its own warnings in pieces. The sky watchers saw changes. The farmers saw seasons fail. The priests heard old prophecies stir. The merchants saw trade slow. The rulers saw unrest. The coast dwellers saw the sea move. No one connected enough of the pattern in time. And then the pattern connected itself. This is why the old stories feel like warnings rather than entertainment. They are not simply saying, a flood happened. They are saying, the world can change faster than your institutions. They are not simply saying, fire fell. They are saying, the sky is part of history. They are not simply saying, the gods taught us. They are saying, knowledge can be lost so deeply that later generations call its survivors divine. When we rewrite the story in this form, the mystery becomes less about proving an ancient machine and more about understanding the fragility of civilization. The machine may or may not be real. The fragility certainly is. There is evidence everywhere that civilizations can regress. The end of the Bronze Age saw palace systems fail, writing disappear in some regions, trade collapse, and populations move violently through a darkened political landscape. The fall of Rome in the West did not erase all knowledge, but it transformed systems of administration, infrastructure, economy, and education. The collapse of Mayan cities left monumental centers swallowed by forest. The abandonment of great urban worlds has happened again and again. These are known collapses within recorded or archaeological history. They prove the principle on a smaller scale. Now imagine the same principle under planetary stress. The result would be indistinguishable from the myth of a lost age. A survivor after such a collapse would not describe supply chain failure or climate feedback loops. He would say the world ended. He would say the sun changed. He would say the old cities died. He would say the gods were angry. He would say only a few carried the seed of the next world. And he would not be entirely wrong. The seventh civilization theory is therefore a story about translation. Translating myth back into possible memory. Translating ruins back into possible inheritance. Translating anomalies back into questions. Translating our own confidence back into vulnerability. It is also a story about silence. The silence under the sea. The silence under the desert. The silence of museums where strange objects rest unseen. The silence of dismissed oral traditions. The silence of extinct languages. The silence of names no one speaks because no one knows them. A civilization that loses its name has died twice, once in catastrophe, and again in memory. If 6 worlds came before ours, their names may be gone forever. We may never know what they called themselves. We may never know their songs, their fears, their laws, their children's games, their burial prayers, their jokes, their astronomy, their mistakes. We may only know them through the pressure they left in later cultures, a stone method here, a flood myth there, a star alignment, a sacred number, a story of a teacher from the sea. That should make the investigation more reverent, not less. These are not just puzzles. They may be graves. A drowned city is not only a mystery. It is a place where people lived. A megalithic ruin is not only an engineering question. It is the labor of hands and minds. A myth of disaster is not only symbolism. It may be the cry of a community trying not to forget the dead. The past deserves caution because it was once someone's present. The modern world often consumes mysteries as entertainment, but the deeper version of this story asks for something quieter. It asks for attention. It asks us to sit with uncertainty without rushing to either belief or dismissal. It asks us to treat old stories as witnesses whose language has changed, not fools whose words are worthless. It asks us to imagine that the dead may have been more capable than our categories allow. And it asks us what kind of ancestors we want to become. If the 8th civilization rises after us, what will they find? They may find our plastic in sediment, our radioactive signatures, our concrete, our metals, our modified landscapes, our bones, perhaps even fragments of satellites fallen from orbit. But will they find our meaning? Will they know what we loved, what we feared, what we understood, what we ignored? Or will they misread us as we may have misread those before us? Perhaps the greatest act of civilization is not building high. Perhaps it is leaving a message that can be understood after everything falls. Stone can help. So can metal. So can stories. So can distributed archives, seed vaults, durable maps, open knowledge, and humility. If we truly feared becoming a lost world, we would design memory differently. We would not trust only fragile digital systems. We would not store all wisdom in formats dependent on continuous power. We would not hide knowledge behind institutions that can collapse with states. We would not laugh at the ancient instinct to carve warnings into stone. Maybe the old monuments are not primitive because they are stone. Maybe they are wise because they are stone. Stone is slow. Stone waits. Stone does not need electricity. Stone can be misinterpreted, but it survives long enough to be misinterpreted. That is more than most of our archives may achieve. The future may judge us not by how advanced we became, but by how well we preserved what mattered. This is the real warning of the seventh civilization. If there were 6 before us, they did not fail because they lacked brilliance. They failed because brilliance was not enough. Something broke the chain. Perhaps nature broke it. Perhaps war broke it. Perhaps their own power broke it. Perhaps all of these arrived together. But whatever the cause, continuity failed. If continuity fails for us, our brilliance will not save our memory. The lights will go out. The systems will go silent. The stories will begin. And we will enter myth. Someone will say there was once an age when people spoke across the air. Someone will say there were towers that touched the clouds. Someone will say the people made suns in their hands. Someone will say they angered the sky. Someone will say the ocean took their cities. Someone will say a remnant survived in the hills. Someone will say the old ones knew the stars. And perhaps, far in the future, a child will fall asleep to a story about us, never knowing that we were real. This is why the question matters. Not because it gives us a fantasy of lost greatness, but because it gives us a language for loss. It reminds us that civilization is temporary unless it prepares to endure. It reminds us that the earth is older than our confidence. It reminds us that memory is fragile. It reminds us that progress without humility can become another route to ruin. The seventh civilization, if that is what we are, still has time to become different. We can search the drowned shelves. We can document endangered languages. We can study myths without contempt. We can map monuments carefully. We can protect archives in forms that outlive our machines. We can build redundancy into food, water, energy, and knowledge. We can teach future generations not only what we know, but how easily knowing can be lost. We can become the civilization that listens. And if there is no literal cycle, if the 6 worlds are only symbols, the lesson still holds. The past is deeper than certainty. The future is more fragile than comfort. The present is not guaranteed. A civilization that understands this becomes wiser even if the old mystery remains unsolved. Maybe that is enough. Maybe the point of the lost worlds is not to prove they existed in every detail. Maybe the point is to remind us that we, too, can be lost. When the old stones stand under starlight, when drowned terraces wait beneath black water, when myths speak of fire and flood, when the earth reveals sudden scars in ice and sediment, they all seem to ask the same question in different languages. Will you remember? Will you prepare? Will you look beneath the story you were given? Or will you become another story given to someone else? The answer is not buried only in the past. It is being written now, in every choice that either strengthens continuity or weakens it. Every archive preserved, every ecosystem protected, every coastline studied, every myth reconsidered, every fragile system made resilient, every warning taken seriously, every piece of knowledge made durable. These are acts of resistance against the cycle. If the 6 civilizations before us fell, then they are not only warnings. They are invitations. Invitations to do what they could not do, or did not do in time. To see the pattern. To name the danger. to preserve the flame, and perhaps, at last, to break the rhythm of forgetting. Until then, the older worlds remain where they have always been, beneath our feet, beneath our seas, beneath our myths, and perhaps beneath our skin. Waiting not to be worshipped, but to be understood. The night is quiet. The ruins do not move. The ocean covers its secrets. The stars keep their old positions, or seem to. Somewhere, a stone still points toward a horizon chosen by people whose names are gone. Somewhere, a story of flood is told again. Somewhere, a child asks whether it really happened. The honest answer is this: we do not know everything. And that is where the journey begins. And maybe that is the most important thing to carry from this entire journey, not certainty, but openness. Certainty ends the search too early. Openness allows the stones, the myths, the shorelines, the fossils, the sediments, and the old stories to remain in conversation with one another. A closed mind sees only ruins. An open one asks why the same warning appears again and again under different names. If the seventh civilization is only a metaphor, it is still a powerful one. It tells us that every age thinks it is the final age of understanding. Every age believes its maps are complete. Every age imagines that its version of history is stable. Then the ground shifts. A new discovery rises. A coastline is mapped. A buried city appears. A myth is matched to geology. A forgotten people is found where no one expected them. The timeline expands, and yesterday's certainty becomes tomorrow's embarrassment. That has happened before. It will happen again. So perhaps the wisest position is not belief without question or rejection without study. Perhaps the wisest position is watchfulness. To watch the oceans as archives. To watch the deserts as buried libraries. To watch myths as damaged memory. To watch monuments as messages whose language may not be fully translated. To watch our own world with the humility of people who know that brightness can fade. Because if history is deeper than we were told, then humanity is older in spirit than it seems. We are not simply inventors of the future. We are also heirs of forgotten recoveries. We carry, somewhere inside our species, the habit of beginning again. That habit has saved us before. It may have saved us 6 times. But beginning again is not the same as remembering. The challenge before us is to do both. To preserve enough that those who come after do not have to start in darkness. To leave signs clear enough that they are not mistaken for myth. To create memory strong enough to cross catastrophe. To become ancestors who are not lost. If this story has followed you into the dark, let it rest there gently. Not as fear, but as awareness. The world is old. The earth remembers more than we do. The seas have covered kingdoms, the deserts have buried rivers, and the sky has changed before. Somewhere beneath all of it, the past continues to wait. And if we listen carefully enough, we may hear what the vanished worlds were trying to say. Do not assume you are first. Do not assume you are safe. Do not assume the light cannot go out. Carry the memory forward.